Welcome back, viewers. You're watching WION The World is One. This is Speed News. Let's start. At least 3 people have been injured after Russia launched an overnight drone attack on the Ukrainian port city of Odessa. Videos released from Odessa's state emergency service showed damaged residential buildings, damaged warehouses and civilian infrastructure. Firefighters were seen dousing several fires which broke out in the city as a result of the attack. As the war rages on in Gaza, Hamas has claimed it has lost control and lost track of the group which was holding Israeli-American hostage Eden Alexander shortly after an airstrike on their location in the Strip. Abu Ubaida, who is the spokesperson for the Al-Qassam Brigade, said the group is still trying to establish contact. Alexander was serving as a soldier in an elite infantry unit on the Gaza border when he was abducted by Palestinian militants during the 2023 attack on Israel. Out of the 251 hostages taken during the October 7th attack, 58 remain in captivity, including 34 whom the Israeli military has declared dead. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited northern Gaza and vowed to intensify military offensive against Hamas to secure the release of hostages. Netanyahu claimed Israel has been fighting for its existence. He held a printed statement he said had been released on the same day by Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. It reportedly explained why Israel must be destroyed. Netanyahu was accompanied by Defense Minister Israel Katz and military commanders to northern Gaza. There, they received a security review from regional commanders on the military efforts to win the war against Hamas. Houthi media reports series of American airstrikes in Yemen. According to Houthi-backed Al Masira TV, over 15 airstrikes were reported in provinces of Hodeidah and Al Baida. Fresh airstrikes have also been reported in Raghwan and Marib governorates. Donald Trump has suggested jailing U.S. citizens in El Salvador. In an Oval Office meeting with El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele, Trump proposed that homegrown criminals should be deported to El Salvador. The South American nation has been accepting people deported from the U.S. and imprisoning them. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi has declined to say whether Trump's suggestion is even legal. Asked on Fox News if the idea was legal, Bondi dodged that question and said that these are Americans who Trump is saying have committed the most heinous crimes. White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt said Trump is looking into the legal question. The head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, is due to visit Tehran today for discussions with senior Iranian officials. He's set to meet Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and the head of the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran, Mohammad Islami. Ahead of the meeting, Grossi said he would consult with all the parties involved to create a favorable atmosphere to help resolve the existing issues. According to latest reports from the UN nuclear watchdog, Iran had an estimated 274.8 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60%, nearing the weapons grade of 90%. Just a day after freezing over $2.2 billion in federal funding, US President Donald Trump has threatened to levy taxes on Harvard University. Intensifying his attack on the university, Trump posted on social media calling for removing Harvard's tax-exempt status and taxing it as a political entity. The threat comes after the Ivy League school allegedly refused to bow down to the White House demands. These included crackdown on anti-Semitism, closure of its diversity, equity and inclusion programs. The US Justice Department has slapped federal charges against a man for two recent arson attacks targeting a Tesla dealership and the Republican Party headquarters in New Mexico. The announcement was made by US Attorney General Pam Bondi on social media. Bondi labeled the accused Jameson Wagner as a domestic terrorist and wrote that she has directed prosecutors not to negotiate. If convicted of the two counts of malicious damage or destruction of property by fire or explosives, Wagner could be jailed for up to 20 years on each count. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg has told a US federal court that Facebook decided to buy Instagram because the app had a better camera. Now, Zuckerberg testified for a second day in a landmark US antitrust trial, defending Meta against accusations that Meta took over Instagram and WhatsApp to devour budding competitors. The Federal Trade Commission has pointed to emails in which Zuckerberg proposed acquiring photo-sharing app Instagram as a way to neutralize a potential Facebook competitor. He had also expressed worry that encrypted messaging service WhatsApp could grow into a social network one day. In a tit-for-tat move, France has expelled 12 Algerian officials a day after Algeria announced the expulsion of the same number of French officials. Diplomatic tensions between the two countries escalated after France arrested an Algerian consular official on suspicion of involvement in the abduction of Algerian influencer Amir Bokhors. French prosecutors indicted 3 Algerian nationals, including a consular official, on suspicion of involvement in Bokhors' abduction and terrorist conspiracy. Algeria claimed the indictments were aimed at undermining recent attempts to repair ties. At least 4 students were injured after a shooting at Wilmer Hutchins High School in Dallas, where there were no reports of any casualty. 3 students suffered gunshot wounds that ranged from serious to non-life-threatening. Students were seen evacuating the main school building after the shooting was reported to authorities. According to the Dallas police, the gunman, who was identified and was at large after the incident, has now been arrested. Sudan's paramilitary rapid support forces led by Mohammed Hamdan Daglo has announced a new rival government. It has thrown a direct challenge to the army-backed administration in Sudan, with whom it is fighting for the last 2 years. Making the announcement on Telegram, Dagalo declared that the establishment of the government of peace and unity, a broad coalition aimed at representing Sudan's true face. This comes after the RSF and its allies signed a charter in Kenya in February, declaring a government of peace and unity in areas they control. According to Dagalo, the RSF signed a transitional constitution with civil and political forces. With Sudan's civil war entering its third year. The G7 foreign countries have called for an immediate and unconditional ceasefire in Sudan. In a statement, the G7 foreign ministers condemned attacks by the paramilitary rapid support forces and urged both sides to engage in meaningful negotiations. The civil war in Sudan has claimed the lives of tens of thousands, displacing 13 million people. The worst humanitarian crisis in recent times. Pakistan Foreign Secretary Amna Baloch will arrive in Bangladesh today to attend the Foreign Office consultation meet, marking the first diplomatic engagement in over a decade. The diplomatic engagement comes days ahead of Pakistan Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar's expected visit to Bangladesh on April 27th. And this would be the maiden visit by a Pakistani foreign minister to Bangladesh since 2012. Relations between the two countries have been on the mend since a student-led, or rather I would say a violent protest led to the ouster of Sheikh Hasina last year. The renewed engagement has seen Bangladesh ease visa rules for Pakistani nationals, launch direct shipping and move towards re-establish direct air link. Pakistani court has approved two petitions filed by jailed former Prime Minister Imran Khan, granting him the right to undergo a medical checkup and to speak with his children living in the UK. Islamabad-based special court judge granted Khan's requests as his lawyer argued that a previous court order had called for his medical checkup, and this should be conducted by the PTI leader's personal doctors in the presence of prison staff. 72-year-old Imran Khan has been lodged in Rawalpindi's Adiala jail since his arrest in August 2023. Recently, his sisters were not allowed to meet him at the prison, prompting a protest by his sister outside jail. Pakistan court has refused to rule out on the detention of Mehrang Baloch, activist and chief organizer of the Baloch Yakjehti Committee, BYC. The 32-year-old was placed under administrative detention by the Balochistan provincial government on 22nd of March. The Balochistan High Court, in a divided verdict, converted the constitutional petition into a representation and forwarded it to the Balochistan Home Department for processing. Mehrang Baloch was advised to first seek clarification from the department on the legality of the detention. Her family claims the verdict is against the principles of justice. After more than 3 years of intensive negotiations, WHO member states have reached a landmark agreement on tackling future pandemics, stating that the generational accord will make the world safer. WHO chief lauded the efforts of the member states in demonstrating that multilateralism is still alive. The agreement aims to correct mistakes made during COVID-19, addressing issues like technology transfer for health products. The finalized text will now be presented for a sign-off at the WHO's annual assembly next month. India is likely to see above normal monsoon rainfall this year. According to a forecast by the IMD, India is likely to receive above normal or 5% more than the historical average rainfall for 2025. While the forecast has a 5% margin of error, this year's forecast suggests that most parts of the country are likely to benefit from favorable rainfall conditions. With the exception of a few regions, the southwest monsoon usually kicks off over Kerala around June 1st and wraps up by mid-September. "2024 turned out to be more devastating for Europe than in a decade. According to a report by the European Copernicus Observatory and the World Meteorological Organization, Europe faced its most extensive floods since 2013 last year. The report states that 2024 was a year of marked climate contrasts between Eastern and Western Europe. More than 4 lakh people were affected by flooding in the continent in 2024. The report says 2024 was the 10th wettest year Western Europe witnessed since 1950. Storms and floods in Western Europe resulted in material damages amounting to $18 billion, and this makes it one of the most expensive natural disasters in European history. And in business, global markets shudder as Nvidia shares plunged 6% in after-hours trade, wiping out $160 billion in market value. The drop follows US curbs on AI chip sales to China, triggering fears of a renewed tech war. President Trump also launched fresh probes into tariffs on critical imports, including pharmaceuticals and minerals, fueling trade war jitters. In Asia, stocks reversed gains. MSCI's regional index fell 0.9%, Hang Seng tumbled 1.6%, while Chinese chip makers bucked the trend, rallying on hopes of domestic substitution. Meanwhile, gold surged to a new record high, with ANZ forecasting $3,600 an ounce by year-end. US bond yield stayed steady ahead of Fed Chair Powell's speech, while the dollar softened further. Brent crude held firm around $65 a barrel. With both Washington and Beijing digging in, markets are bracing for prolonged trade turbulence. Hong Kong Post has announced that it will suspend mail of goods by sea to the US immediately and halt air mail for goods from April 27th. The Post cites what it called bullying and unreasonable US tariffs. The move comes in response to Washington's scrapping of the de minimis exception and a spike in tariffs on goods from Hong Kong starting 2nd of May. While document-only mail remains unaffected, Hong Kong Post warned residents to brace for exorbitant fees if sending goods to the US. The city, once a duty-free trade hub, has faced increasing US restrictions since losing its special trade status following China's 2020 national security law imposition. The Postal Authority says it will not collect any US imposed tariffs, taking a firm stand against what it calls abusive trade practices. And the US has slashed its profit forecast for the current quarter and warned of downside risks to its full-year outlook if the US economy enters a recession. It estimates a recession could wipe 5% points off its revenue, pushing full-year profit down. Despite this, forward bookings in premium and international segments remain strong and weakening demand. Amid this weakening demand, United States plans to cut domestic capacity by 4 percentage points starting in the second half of 2025, echoing a broader industry move to protect margins. United shares down 31% this year, jumped 6.7% in after-hours trade following its first quarterly profit in 5 years.